Hey, this has been a little technical issue, so I do apologize for that. My name is Yaakov Lazar from Kol Shamot. I believe our members from the Epic family will be joining us shortly. I'd like to introduce Yehoshua Sachs, who will be running this panel for tonight. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, Yehoshua, and I think we should get started. Apologize for everybody for the delay.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Lazar. Um, and thank you everyone for joining. I know there was some sort of delay. It's recorded, so I guess everyone can get the recording. Um, so really, I think the goal for tonight or today is that we should come away with something practical to do with our kids. The summertime is really a great opportunity to be able to really connect with our children. There's a little bit of a less, usually our schedules are a little easier. And I hope tonight everyone can gain, I guess, first of all, an understanding of their kids, what they really, really, truly need, and then how to do that. And I hope I can offer that to you. If anyone has a question, they can write it in the chat. And maybe I'll ask everyone to write into the chat at a certain point. If they have like for a, if I have a question and I want to see what people think. Um, and I guess I'll start off by first telling you a little bit about who I am. My name is Yeshua Sachs. I lived in Lakewood for a bunch of years, Lakewood, New Jersey. Recently moved to Eretz Israel. And I started off as a social worker with children. I would see kids, built up a caseload of kids, and very, very quickly realized that the work wasn't really with the children. The work was with the parents of the children. And I basically took all the trainings that I had. I started meeting with the parents and not just like, a follow up every 6 weeks after seeing the child. It was more like, no, instead of the child session, once a month come in. And then it became, instead of a child session, twice a month come in. And then it became, you just come in. No, let's just talk and let's see how I can help you understand yourself better, help you understand your children better, and help you just really, even practically, like the practical skills of what to do. So I really started off that way. Subsequently, I've given classes, and then I do a lot of personal work with Bachrim and parents if they parenting. But then a lot of times it turns into more personal to be able to get to the place that they're looking to get to. Um, the road has been an amazing one, and it's actually I've learned so much about child development. Where really every parent that I'm speaking to, I'm also speaking to a child. I'm also speaking to where these parents came from, and really so much of our parenting is like so much like a cycle of what we're used to, and so that's where that's where that's that's what I've been doing, and and I really, what tonight I think I'd really like to first of all give you a background of some of the needs of our kids, some of the needs that we might think are not legitimate, but I'm gonna try and um, have you recognize that they are legitimate. Sometimes they seem illegitimate because our kids will ask for them in funny ways. But if we can fill up our children's needs in a positive way and in a way that we sort of undercut what they're going to try and do if they don't get those needs met, um, then we'll really fill them up in a good positive way. So for I think for tonight, I just want to give you an outline. I want to first tell you that the base of what we'll talk about is going to be really what I would do in a session with a child. So I had 45-minute sessions with a child, and I would split the 45 minutes into 15-minute segments. So 15 minutes was something the child wanted to do. 15 minutes was something that I wanted to do with the child. And 15 minutes was what we both decided that we would both want to do. And it could be in any order. The child chose which 15 minutes was at which time. But I'd like to really focus on the first 15 minutes that I said, and this is what I want to transfer over to you parents. you as ones that can really do this with your child. And I'm going to say it is 10 times more powerful when a parent does this than when with a stranger therapist, quote unquote stranger, trying to build rapport, trying to have the child enjoy coming and getting out of camp and getting out of all the fun stuff. Really trying and giving this over to parents. And I want to focus on those 15 minutes. I'm actually gonna, yeah, we'll talk about how to structure it, but the 15 minutes of what the child wants to do with me. And I wanna, and so we'll put that on hold. We'll get there in a minute. But I do want to ask everybody, maybe if they want to write in the chat even, if they're comfortable, if I would ask you, what is, what are our children's needs? So when I say needs, I don't mean like that they're needy, like, oh, come on, they need this, or like, what are our children's needs? That means emotional. Obviously, they need food. Obviously, they need shelter. Obviously, they need, you know, a roof over their head, those clothes to wear. But when I'm saying needs, I'm talking about emotional needs. Does anyone have, and if someone wants to write it in, I'll give them like a minute, what they think, and you could think of maybe one of your children, it doesn't have to be all of them. Maybe one child can help you narrow it down so that you can think of like, it could be a one-word answer, a two-word answer. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I think racking our brain a little bit, it's something that we don't really think of so often. And so if we can rack our brain and try and think, what is the need of, you know, my oldest child or my middle child or whatever it is? I'm curious if everyone, what people think. I'll give you a minute. If you don't want to write it, you don't need to. Okay, so maybe people are still thinking. But what I'm gonna lay it out for you. It really is too big for this topic, for this for this session, to really get into the specifics and hows and the whens and the whys and what do you mean, but I do that, and what do you mean? It doesn't make sense. That's all really for much of a like a longer back and forth. But I'm gonna give you two words, um, two separate needs, and it goes so much deeper than this, but it's a way that we can grab onto it, that we can understand how we can actually give it to our kids in a real way. So number one is that they need attention. Attention is not, attention is a biggie. It's really emotionally connected attention. It's not just taking them to the store, or it's not baking with them. Baking them is great, or it's not having them together with us in the kitchen. And that's sometimes what we think is attention. But for the type of attention that I'm referring to that can really fill up a child's need and fill him up in a way that he's full, is going to be a specific type of attention. We'll get to that. And then the other thing they need is the sense of control and the sense of power. So people might feel like, yeah, so the sense of control and the sense of power, when I say sense, I'm very careful with the way I'm saying it. It doesn't mean that they have control in the house or they have control or power over the house. It means that they have a sense of control and a sense of power. And the key to both of these is that we have to remember so many of these needs, so much of these needs are on the child's level. So in a world where we let kids decide certain things that are above their pay grade, I'd like to dumb it down for you and say that when we're talking about attention and we're talking about control or these type of needs, it is the simplest way we can give it to our kids. Not for them to choose what's for dinner, not for them to choose what type of anything that's maybe even higher than the pay grade that they can make, right? We don't let our kids drive a car. Why not? Because we understand developmentally they're not able to drive a car. So we don't let our kids decide what type of car we should buy. Or we don't, that's not developmentally appropriate for them. And so when I say control and attention, I'm talking about their level control and their level attention. And this is a very important piece. And even if you only come out tonight with just this idea, that when we talk about filling up our children's needs, it's really dipping down, sitting down on the bench with them, and understanding where they're at. When we can fill up our children's ability to feel like they have control with something almost simple and dumb, because in a way, their life is simple and dumb. I'm talking about for younger kids. It really is. And the idea of attention is the same thing. When we're trying to give our children attention, it's not the attention that we might think that we might seek. It's the attention that they need. And this requires us to sort of lower ourselves and go literally down a bunch of floors. Like I think of sometimes our life as an apartment building, and like each floor is another, let's say 10 years, or each floor is another year. And you go into like the first floor, that's the first year of life. Those apartments are going to look very different than the ones we live in at 40 or 30 or 20 or 10. It's going to look very different. There's not going to be any furniture. There's just going to be gooey stuff, tons of bottles and those type doll maybe in the first year of life, and then you climb up to the second floor, and then there's maybe a little more stuff, and then third, fourth, fifth. You go up to the 10th year, there's scooters, and there's maybe some good food and whatever. But when we're living in our 30th floor or 50th floor, we have a hard time going down literally the elevator and entering their world and saying, what's going on for you in your world? What's up with you? What's your world about? And that's really the key to creating the ability to fill our kids' needs. When you are able to literally hit the elevator button down to level 5 and go into 5 and experience their world, you're now meeting their needs. You're not saying, oh, you come up to me and let's go shopping together, or you come up to me and let's do something that I want to do because it's convenient for me. You're actually going down to their level and giving it to them. It's a very hard thing to do because we aren't living in the same world as them in a way, but it actually makes things a little easier because it makes it easier for us to be able to dip into their world. So like I always say, in a way, if you think about it, us as parents, we're like to kids, really whatever age, we're like the experts. Like we never make mistakes. We know how to do this. We know how to drive. We know how to walk. We know where to go. We're like an expert in their mind. And so so that already there's a disconnect between us and what's going on for our kid. Like I think of it so many times like we plop down on a couch, our younger kids have to climb onto a couch. We um we have to go like we just get into the car, they like climb into the car. Everything is our world is different, just our height, everything is so different. And so for us to lower ourselves, literally sit down on the bench with them, sit down on where they're at, sit down in their apartment building, in their apartment, and see what's going on for them, that's like a huge, huge thing to do. Not easy, but huge. And so that's like the first step I think we should all understand is that when I say that let's try and fill up our children's needs and our children have this attention piece and this control piece, it doesn't mean that they can control the 40th floor or the 30th floor. Chas v'shalom. That's anarchy. That doesn't make any sense. But it's giving them a sense within their own world, within their own system, their very simple. Talk about a 5-year-old. Talk about a 6-year-old. Very simply letting them have a sense of control. That's what's legitimately filling them up. So, in our culture, not in our culture, but in the culture out there, there's so much of like giving your children choices to make things that they don't even understand about. They have no clue. And it's like, oh yeah, we have to give them a choice. No, you don't, because that's not on their level. The same way you don't let them cook for you or turn on fires, or you don't give them that responsibility. They can't hold the responsibility for decisions that are way above them. And so that's very important to remember. And it's important also to remember that it makes it a drop easier for us. Once we can jump into that mode, it actually makes it easier because it's pretty easy to fill. You don't have to offer huge things. You don't have to do huge things for them. Um, so that's a very important piece. Um, when when I think of, so I'll give you like two very, very simple examples. If we're talking about a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old, or really any age you can make that connection, we offering them something for them to decide that really it's almost like we had to create it out of nothing, is a form of giving them a sense of control. So, and a sense of power, and a sense of significance, and a sense of being relevant. That's and it's as simple as almost like, do you want to open the door or should I open the door? Right? Like just creating a decision and ability for them to decide, and then you follow with their decision. Not even should we go here for lunch or should we go there for lunch? If you're okay with their decision, you can offer it to them. But it's creating literally out of the thin air an environment full of decisions that they can make that almost seem like superfluous. Like, this is so easy. Why am I even offering? Like, do you want to climb in through the front of the car or through the side of the car? Those are age appropriate choices for them. And they actually feel chashav when you let them do. Um, so And this goes throughout the range of life. A 12-year-old has a much higher degree of the choices or the decisions that they can make. A 14-year-old has a much higher level. It's not the same level that we have, but it's higher, and it's all age appropriate. This is and this is gonna and this idea is really gonna cover the span of our children's lifetime. And I'm gonna say what I'm gonna offer you today to do with your kids is actually gonna we can do it with our married kids. Doesn't it's all just going to have to be age appropriate. Um, so the number one thing is that we have to realize so much of us meeting our children's needs means we're getting down into their world. Literally getting down, like opening up the door to the cave, opening the door to that first floor apartment, and sticking our head in like this, looking around and saying, whoa, this is different, but I'm going to connect to it. They're living in our home and they're living in our world, but really, they're not. Really, what's important for us rates 0 by them. What's important to them rates 0 by us. The example that I sometimes give is a child loses their toy that they love, their doll. On their developmental level, that 3-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, on their developmental level, that doll to them is like, for us, losing a diamond ring. And so if we approach our child and say, oh, we'll get you another one, it's okay, there's so many dolls in the playroom, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. Imagine if someone told that to us when we lost something so sentimental to us. That wouldn't be helpful. I mean, we might appreciate it if they say they'll buy a new one, but it's not really hitting it. No one really just chapped me. No one really got me. No one really understood me. And so that's like a perfect example of how much it will take to like sort of dig in and go into the child's world and understand their perspective, understand what their needs are at that moment. And it's really hard to do. We're living in a world that that we have tons of stuff on our mind. We have big stuff, quote unquote, on our mind. And and to just randomly all the time connect to our child when they come in fetching about something or they don't want to do something or all the stuff that are going on in the house, that's very hard to do because ultimately we're living in a different reality than them. We really are. And the if even if we could sometimes check in and even if sometimes we can give to our kids, we have so much on our shoulders nowadays. Life is so quick, life is so fast, everything's on speed, and it's really hard to connect to what's going on for our child. And even if we do it a little bit, parents will tell me very often, oh, I spend the whole day with him. He's home at 1 or she's home at 2 and I'm spending the whole day with him. And the question really is that how much of that are you giving them a dose of what they need? See, the way I look at it is almost like we try our hardest and we do the best we can with our kids, and for the most part we are really, really good at it. The thing is that for our children, what they're experiencing is something like this. I think of it like when you fly to, let's say, America or fly back to Israel, right? So you wake up early and you throw something into your mouth, and then you nosh on another thing, and you grab another thing to nosh, and then you run onto the plane. You're starving, but you're not interested in the food that they're giving, so you pull out another granola bar and you eat a granola, and you're constantly eating and nibbling, but you're not full. You're constantly picking and going, and your mouth is constantly busy, but you're not full. As opposed to someone sits down, takes a meal, before he goes on the flight, he eats up protein, washes, benches, feels full. He's not going to be eating the whole time and gnashing the entire time on the plane and stuff like this he, because he ate and he's full. So even though his mouth is not as busy, compare that to I am not sitting and spending the entire day with my son or my daughter, but they're full. I'm full. I don't need to do that. The child doesn't need that because they already got it in a really strong gesunter meal. That's the way I look at it. Not only is that how I look that we can help fill our kids' needs, it makes it easier for us because we really can't fill them in a um, in a real strong way if it's just piecemeal. So this is what I've come up with. Maybe some people have heard of the concept before. I'm gonna say I have certain rules to the game that I think really resonate for kids, and it's really what I've done in my sessions, and that I'd like to offer to parents to do. And it is pretty specific, and it's a way of giving a meal to your child. It's not giving them the attention when they're screaming, and it's not giving them. We could talk about how to do that, but that's not even the important part of this um, of this webinar. I think the way I look at it is that the more we can give them this, the less tantrums will happen. Because if what I'm saying is true, really so much tantrums and so many of their neediness and the nagging and the thing that get on that really grate on our nerves is coming from the fact that they're not full, their needs aren't being met. So they'll get their needs in any way they could. They might even get it within because their father or their mother shouted at them. It's a really bad way of getting it, but they got the attention. They actually got the power also because they made their parents angry. So let's instead of letting them do that to us, let's give it to them pre-rate it, give it to them before so that they can be full. And this is what I've come up with. And if you want to write this down, you can write it down. It's pretty specific, and if anyone has any questions, they can chime in. So tachlis, getting down to what to do. What I like to tell parents to do is take that 15 minutes that I was saying that the child gets to choose what he does with me in the session, slash off 5 minutes from that, make it 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, and create a time with your child that's scheduled the same way I scheduled it within a session. Your child's going to have a scheduled time with you. This is super important. Most people say just spend time with your child. I'm saying make it scheduled in the summertime, and you can let your child know that this is only for we're going to try it out in the summer. I get busy in the winter, and I hope this doesn't go away. But you have to be very upfront with your children that of their expectation because they're going to want this. I promise you, they're going to want this. They're going to want it over a trip that you might do. What's going to happen is that you're going to say we're going on a trip, and they're going to say, hey, but what about that time? Because this is going to be the most important thing for them because you're hitting the core needs that your child has any age. I'm gonna say it's gonna be around the 7 to 10 minute, but keep it up. You could do 10 minutes of a scheduled time with your child. Lechatchila, best case scenario, it's gonna be every day of the week. Not practical for most families. Um, I would say there's so many tweaks you can make. You can make every other day. You can make every other weekday. You can make every other weekend. You can make only weekends. You can make only weekdays. You can make every other day in the weekday. You can make every other day in the weekend. There's so many ways to tweak it. And there are so many ways to make it doable within your family setting. Many people have many kids. And so I would say to pick one child to start with. One child that you feel like they need the most of it. And pick him or her to do this with them. And this is scheduled. This is like one of the most important parts of this is like the same way a client would come to me as a scheduled time and they know Monday at 9:15 they're coming to see me. Scheduled. Monday at 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:10 p.m. scheduled on the calendar, on the fridge. They have their own calendar. They know they're going to get it. It's a major, major piece to filling needs is when your child knows that they're going to get it met. That will actually help them in school, in camp, because they know, not like in their mind so much, more they feel and they understand that they're going to get you. You're going to be there for them at that time by hook or by crook. So let's say, I'm just giving an example. Let's say you decide every other day with Maishi. Make a calendar, 30-day calendar. Hebrew, English doesn't make a difference. With those boxes, you write. We'll get to what you write. Mark it in blue. That's it. 7 o'clock to 7:10, and you are there. You are ready. Another piece to this time is that we should name the time. The same way I made it with my client, I told my client, it's your time. The other 15 minutes was my time, and the other 15 minutes was both our times. This time should have a name to it. It could be named special time. It could be named Mami Suri time. It can be named Tati time, Tati Maishi time, Tati Suri time. Whatever you want to name it, it should have a name and that name should stick. That name should be at the 7 o'clock appointment on those days that you're willing to do it and you're able to do it. It has to be one-on-one. It can't be two children to one parent. It can't be two parents to one child. It's one-on-one. Child and whichever parent. Sometimes parents will, if they're able to, they'll do it at the same time with different children. 10 minutes with Suri Mami, 10 minutes with Moishi Tati. The next day, they might want to flip it. There's so many ways to do it, but the point is it has to be one-on-one. There can't be anything else going on during that time. There's no phone. There's no one else knocking on the door. And this is very difficult to do. People say, oh, easy stuff. This is going to be the hardest thing you can do. It's going to be the most effective and you'll see the most results from this, I believe. So there's nothing else going on in the room. There's no phone, there's no distractions. Phones, I would say lechatchila, phones out of the room, not even on airplane mode in the room, out of the room. And you're just with your child. Another thing I like to tell parents is that they should try and keep it as rigid as they can to these times. 10 minutes, that's it. Even by a timer and time it. It sounds funny, but it really is important to keep it at 10 minutes and consistent and steady for whatever days you agree to do with them. The next sort of rule to the game is that we have to do something the child wants to do with us. They choose what they want their mommy and tati to do with them. That choice is the power piece that we were talking about. This is giving them a dose of power. They come, I want you to draw with me to color. Okay, let's color. That's what we're going to do. And I can almost guarantee you that they will end up preparing it before. They'll know what they want to do with you. So it might be coloring. I would say you can go out and buy simple games. The simpler the game, the better. This is not about the game you're playing. It's about the connection that you're forming through the game and the way of being when you're playing the game. So if you want to offer the child you might want to offer him a menu, a list of 6 things that he could choose from each time. You can make the menu bigger if you want. So it might be, we could play Connect 4, we could play Solitaire, we could play Keep the Balloon Up, we could play Finish My Sentence, we can play anything that they want to do, whatever you're okay doing. It's not about going out for Slurpees or ice cream, because then it becomes all about the ice cream. It's not about going out to the biggest amusement park, not that you can do that in 10 minutes. That's not what it's about. That's making our kids happy for the moment, which they need. We need to do that for our kids, but it's not filling their needs. So when you fill a core need of a child, they're going to feel it and they're going to want more and more of it. And it's going to be the thing that's most important for them. And when we let them choose what they want to do with us, it hits a core thing that my parents are doing what I want to do with me. So the coloring, when you're child-centered like this, the coloring is going to take on a different thing. You're going to start asking questions. Do you want me to color with you? Or do you want me to just watch with you? Do you want me to color a different picture or the same picture than you do? You know, you're going to start formulating questions because this is a 10-minute time that's all about them. And it's only for 10 minutes, so we can handle it. And we're giving them that option. So it's not about you winning the Othello game if they choose Othello, and it's not about you coloring a more beautiful picture. It's more about you completely leaning in to what they're experiencing and asking them what they want. This is all about them. This is their time with you. That we try and give to our kids as much as we can piecemeal throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the summer, but it doesn't usually end up happening. Kids are busy, and at the end of the day, they'll go out and have fun because they want to have fun in the moment. So that's why when we create this time, it creates a coveted, I'm going to say special, very, in a way, Halig time with your child. And then the last piece is going to be the hardest piece, and this is the piece that takes a lot of practice. The last piece is going to be the piece of dropping completely down to their world. So it's going to be giggling with them, having fun with them, almost in a way becoming their best friend. It's a good way to think of it. How would a best friend play? Would they be like, would they say something? How would they play? They would be on their level, fun, giggling, really involved in that game. Almost like lose yourself in enjoying this time with them. That's the way we connect to our kids. That's the way our kids feel our connection. It's not just the spending time and just the amount of time that we spend with them in the kitchen. It's about going down to their level, like I was saying, and dropping into their world, but really being there and acting that way. So you're not going to be out of control and crazy and silly, but you're gonna almost turn into their friend in this time. And it's a very structured time. It's going to be done in 10 minutes. It's not like this is the way mommy is or this is the way Tati is. And I find that parents have the hardest time doing this. To really connect with our child and enjoy that game of shoots and ladders, really connect with our child and just like find so much pleasure in coloring that lake with them. But that's what they want to do. That's what they're telling you they want you to do with them. And with this, you're filling up a core need. And when you fill up a core need, our kids are much more relaxed. Our kids are less naggy. They don't need as much in a weird way. They don't need as much. They're not as needy. When we say, oh, that, amusement park or that thing that we're going to go to is closed, the tantrum is going to be lighter. The tantrum is going to be for less time, and the tantrum is not going to happen as often. And this is really, we all want to give our kids what they need, and we all want to be mechanech them and help them. This is the platform for it. This is the platform where you're creating a time with them that's all about them. I know this idea floats around people, but I think the main difference in what I'm telling you is more the scheduled time. I almost think of it as an appointment. Like what happens when you miss an appointment with a doctor because you had an unexpected thing? You reschedule it. So you got to reschedule this if a wedding comes up or something out of the ordinary comes up. Because this is about making your kids feel that their needs will be met. And when a child knows that their needs will be met, I like to say then they're able to rest. And when a child's able to rest, they grow. Right? Half of a flower's life is in the dark where it's just resting. But it rests in order to grow. Our kids need a rest. And when our kids are in their limbic system and the constant fight or flight and needing to get you and fighting and going and going and going, it means they're not resting and they're not thriving. So the ability to be able to give this to our kids is huge. And I'm going to throw this out to everybody. Everyone could think about this on their own levels. Imagine if our parents now, we have families and we have our life. Imagine if one of our parents or both our parents called us up and said like, hi, I was just thinking life is so busy. How about we get 10 minutes, call you up, we could Zoom. I just want to hear what's going on for you. I just want to be there to listen to you. Just want to be there, right? We're not kids anymore, so it's going to be more conversational, not games necessarily. I just want to be there to hear you, hear what's going on for your life. I'm going to do what you need me to do, whether it's offer advice, whether it's listen, whether it's shut up, just be quiet, whatever it is, I'm going to be there for you. And I want you to tell me what you want me to do because I feel like I want to connect to you more. How many of us would just love that? Maybe we can't imagine it after all these years, but how many of us would really appreciate that? Coming from a genuine place. And this is us with our own children. This is us with our own life, our own shuls, our own schools, our own everything. We have a life. And we're not living in our parents' home anymore, but it still resonates. Kal v'chomer to our kids. They're living with us, quote unquote, giants in the house, experts in the house, people that just know how to work the world around, and they don't really. And it's really hard for them to connect with us unless we make a genuine effort to do that. And I feel like this is a primary responsibility of a parent to jump on these, right? Most people, when they'll come to me and ask me a question, it usually has to do with a big blow up moment, which I call in the moment. the big blow up time. Or what do I do when my kid's chutzpahdik? Or what do I do when my kid whatever and he doesn't want to eat his dinner and blah 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 blah, right? And that's very valid concerns and we address it. But I tell them you have to address something before, and that's your connection with your child. You know, I always think of it like a doctor. You go to a doctor because you have your throat's hurting, so he prescribes you numbing mints. So you suck the mint. Okay, it works for a day. Then you come in and you're like, my eyes are burning. So he gives you a spray or a drop. Then you complain that your ears are hurting. He gives you numbing ear. And then you're just constantly running after your own tail because he's not getting to the root of the infection. You have strep. He has to give you the antibiotics. Let's get that antibiotics in. And then suddenly your eyes feel better and your throat you can swallow. And it's working again and things are better because you hit the infection. It's the same thing. We can work with behaviors and we can work on the behaviors of every single one of our kids and try and catch our tail and get this and this one pops up. I think of like those arcade games where you have to hit the alligator. This one pops up and this one pops up and this one pops up and you're just constantly running after it when it's like, well, you can just hit them with the dose of what they really need. And I'm going to say what really these behaviors are all about is them screaming to you and crying out to you that they need it, even though they don't know how to do it in an adult way because they're kids. So they're going to do it in very funny ways and very annoying ways and terrible communication. But that's because they're kids and they don't know how to communicate. So it's really our job to undercut that. And so if we're able to commit ourselves to this, and I would say to start in the summer with one child, start as slow as you can. Start with 1 day a week. 1 day a week that you have on the calendar and by hook or by crook, you're there 7 o'clock to 7:10. And if you find that it was really nice for them and it was really nice for you, and you felt connected, bump up twice a week the next week, and bump up 3 times a week. Or schedule one right after you're done if you felt like it went well. But it should be scheduled and it should start slower than faster. It's better to start slow than to pull back. Because then your child feels like that's not geschmack for them. That's really not okay when they feel like that it was taken away from them. And so in what you're really doing here is hitting those two core needs that I mentioned. You're hitting the attention piece because you're emotionally connected to them. You're giving yourself 10 minutes to really lie on the floor with them, giggle, connect, get involved with whatever they want to be involved with. And number two, you're doing what they chose to do. And these things are extremely powerful, especially the fact that you're not doing it as a result of one of their behaviors. You're just scheduling this, and this you're coming preemptively and giving it to them. And it's a huge, huge, it's a game changer, I'm going to say. And I would say it's going to be hard. It's not easy. There are other kids in the house, other needs that need to happen. You have other achrayas and other stuff that are happening. It's going to be hard, but I believe it's really worth the effort, especially in the summer. Your kid's home and they're bored. Give this to them. You know, some parents will say, well, I can give it to them for longer. And I say, no, you can't, because it's really hard to do this for more than 10 minutes with our kids, as crazy as that sounds, in a real connected way. And so if we're able to jump onto this, I'm going to say you're giving your kids the greatest gift that they can ever ask for. They just don't know how to ask for it. When they say, come play a game with me, or come play a game with me, they're really asking for this, but we sometimes don't know how to do it in the correct way, or we don't give it to them exactly how they want it. Or if they start pushing back at what we say, and I push back, and we're going back and forth with each other. They're saying, I just need a dose of power, so I'm going to push back at you because I don't feel like I'm in control of my life, so this is my way of getting control. And they don't know this. That's the crazy part. It's our job to be able to fill these needs and to give it to them. And I think if if there's anything someone can do in the summer, it's this. If there's anything that someone can, you know, commit their time to their kids, it's this. I think the trips are amazing to go with our kids, and it's amazing to spend family time all together. But this is a little different. This is focusing on one specific child at a time. And of course, family time is amazing. And of course, we need it. And of course, we have to go on trips. It's the summer, but to make it easier on us that we don't feel that crazy pressure from them, this can really satisfy them because you're satisfying core needs. And I'll tell you a story. I was telling this to a parent. I was giving him, I was giving them like a little bit of a different prescription, only because it was a little bit of a different family dynamic. But I sort of told them very similar to what I'm telling you now. And they told me they started doing it. And this child was 13, I think, 12 or 13, so older already. And obviously, it went with age level, what they were doing with him. And he got in the mail that his camp was having a reunion on a certain night. Now, this camp was like known for its reunions. It was like the people go to camp just for the reunion in December, you know, like that. It was like an overnight and a whole thing. And he looks at the date and he runs to the fridge and he sees that it was the night that he had his father for 10 minutes. And he was really contemplating on not going. And they worked it out, obviously, and they pushed it off to another day. But you see, when you hit a core need of a child, you hit it, and that's all they want. And this takes practice. It's not easy. It's hard. It's trial and error how to do it, but it's a very, very powerful thing. So if there's anything that I can offer in like a short hour, there's so much more in how to be and how to be with our kids and in this time. There's so much more training, quote unquote, that's needed. So much more understanding of our kids and what happens if they react this way and what happens if they react this way. But this is the basic idea. And I would tell every parent, I truly trust every parent has their own intuition, know their kids the best. There's nothing that I can say to do with your kid that to do with your child that if it's not coming from you and from your wanting to do it and from your intuition, that it's going to work. Because then we're back to like a therapist. You know, a therapist doing it. It has to be coming from you as a parent wanting to connect to your child. And that is ultimately the most powerful thing we can do for our kids. I'm going to quote, there's a famous psychologist, Bessel van der Kolk. He's famous. He deals with trauma. And he said the following: the parent-child connection is the single most powerful mental health intervention known to mankind. I'll say that again. The parent-child connection is the single most powerful mental health intervention known to mankind. I have a lot of things like interventions that I use. There's nothing like the parent connection. And so that's why, if we can bump this into our life, create this sacred 10 minutes, you're doing so much for your child and you're saving yourself time and money. And so I wonder if anyone has any questions. A lot of people will have like technical questions, and I'm welcome to hear. Everyone's welcome to ask. Anyone can email me. My email is parenting@sensoryoutlettherapy.com. You email any questions, I can try and get back to you. And yeah, I hope that was helpful for everybody and at least food for thought.
Yoshua, may I ask you a question? Or,
Sure.
talk about it. I mean, one of the things that we try to, show, teach parents how important it is for a child to feel safe, secure, basically seen and soothed, which equals a secure relationship. Safe, secure, safe, seen, soothed equals security. So when you have these 10 minutes, okay, very, very, very specifically, if a child asks a question, doesn't matter what age the child is, whether it's a young child or whether it's a child, teenager, when they ask you a question to solve a problem, to help them solve a problem or an issue, would you say that it's best to answer them with the solving the question or work with them to see how they can figure out how to work out the situation? Please rethink, when we talk to parents, especially with children who are struggling and very seriously struggling children, whether it's with anxiety, whether it's with depression, whether it's, school-oriented situation. We try to work with them to show that it is best not to solve their problem, but to work it out with them to have to work it out so the child figures out what they do, whether that's a good decision or not a good decision is not the point. The point is that the child to feel that they were heard, that
Absolutely.
that their needs are being met in a different way to be understood. So if a child comes and says, I have this problem, how do I solve it? I would say to them, says, well, if I tell you how to solve it, it's me solving the problem, but I'm more than happy to work it out with you.
So I'll tell you what I like a rule, like a overall rule, is that what I'll tell parents to this specific question is something along the lines like of this. If a child comes and asks and wants to talk to me, even before or to a parent, I'll tell them even before, like let's say you're having this time and they say, I just want to talk to you. Okay, let's say, right, some kids will do that for the 10 minutes, they just want to talk, and that's really what your question is. And so what I would say is like this, even before they ask their question. So like this, before you ask the question, I just want to ask you two things. Do you want me to just listen? So you're asking them. You're getting rid of all the sfekos. Do you want me to just listen? Or do you want me to tell you what I think? Now, every time will be different, and every child will be different, and sometimes your child will surprise you, where you think he for sure wants you to tell him how to fix it or what you think, right? And then if you listen to the words that I'm saying, it's not even that you're saying to fix it. It's what you think. It's not fixing it's like the third step. So you're giving him the option. What do you want from me? And whatever he tells you, you're going to do because that's what he needs right then. So if he says, I want you to tell you what I think, what you think. So you might feel a little uncomfortable, like, oh, but you're just saying what you think. And he could take with what you're saying, he can internalize what he wants. But sometimes he just wants you to listen. And I think this is a great line to ask your child before anything. Your child comes home and he's upset about something. Ask him this question. It doesn't have to be during the 10 minutes or whatever. It's asking him this question. Do you want to know what I think? Or do you want me to just listen? You'd be surprised. Kids, you would say, for sure they want me to just listen. For this specific topic, they're saying, I want to know what you think, Ta. I just want to know. And this is, when you ask that question, you're actually giving him the S's that you just mentioned. You're giving them the soothing and the security. You're giving them that because you're showing him that you're aligned with him. And you just want to know what he needs in this moment. So that's in essence what you're doing. It's not so much about the response. You're just going to follow with what, but you're sort of getting rid of any suffix. You're asking the child.
If anybody else has any questions, please, you can put it in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, we'll try to, give you a live chance if you have. When a child, um, you know, let's say the 10 minutes is going very well, okay? And the child says, can I have a few more minutes? But you have something else planned that you need to take care of. How is best to tell the child, it's not, listen, when it comes to a, therapist, relationship, the therapist say, well, our time is up. I'm sorry. How does the parent respond to that question of saying, I have something else to do right now. I'm sorry. How should the parent respond by saying, our time's up because I really have something else I have to take care of. Um,
Right.
Hopefully family oriented or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Really fantastic. It brings out a great point. So it really highlights the need for the containment and the boundary. Talk about security and safety, the boundary around this time. So it's with a timer. Your child's going to know. There are visual timers you can buy that you can see the time actually going lower. So the child's preparing that it's going to end. There are ones that beep with a minute left. They know there's a minute left. Oh, there's a minute left. Let's finish up, right? So it gives them the warning. If you're playing a game that requires much longer time, so you put the game on pause and continue the next time. But what I would say to a child that's asking, right, let's say you're doing a puzzle. Your child loves puzzles. You can't finish a puzzle in 10 minutes. So what you will do is you'll say, okay, we'll continue after, like it doesn't have to be all done in those 10 minutes. It's a continuous, if he chooses the next time to continue the puzzle, you'll continue the puzzle. But what I do like to tell parents is like this. Of course we could spend more time together. But our 10 minutes, the special time, the tati time's up. So if I have to pick up my phone or if mommy calls me, let's try. Let's see how long we could do it. But I just want you to know it's over now. So the door's going to unlock, whatever. We're going to be, now we're going to, now I'm open for the rest of the family. I'm open to my phone so we can continue playing, but I don't know how long it's going to last. So that's a very nice way to like slowly seep out of it where you're not abruptly stopping the game, but you're stopping the time. That
Okay. So we have a question in the chat.
sure.
Um, if you want to read it, that's
Yeah, one
fine.
sec. Let me see. I don't see which question.
The third one that I have, try with my second born to have special time since he was 2 years old. Now he is 6. Every time I try, it doesn't work out. I can't really understand him and can't tell me what he wants to do. I end up suggesting, but then it usually ends badly. Him throwing the cards, the game all over the room, or something like that. Silly behavior, messing up the family games, toys, etc. I don't feel like it's ever enjoyable for me or him. What to do?
So funny, I don't even see that question. But so okay. So it's a great question. I think it's going to take a little bit of prep. That means make it make it a uh, make it a real agenda on your end to have him prepare what he wants to do. So like creating a calendar with him and showing him this is the time that we're going to spend together. It's going to be 7 o'clock. Could you come with whatever you want to play with? Give him a bunch of options before so he can choose in his mind and give him a reminder 10 minutes before you're going to start your 10 minutes. Say, did you find something, Shlomi? Did you find the thing? I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that we're all set because I don't want it to run into the time. I'd rather start the time right away. And like you're coaxing him on. What I'm going to say is you're going to try and make this time much more contained and serious and focused and saying, I have to get this time in. I want to get this time in. I know it's important for my child, so I'm going to do everything around it to create this appointment. How do you do that? By reminding him. How to do that? By putting out 4 or 5 toys on the floor and saying, "You pick. I'll be back in 5 minutes." By 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 calling it a certain name and continuously calling it and saying, I'm so excited for this special time. I had such a fun time by special time, right? Like I tell parents to name it before and after. Like before you start, like, let's start special time, right? So in their brain, they get it that they're doing it. And then at the end, that was the best special time. That was the best mommy time, right? And then like, it's in their brain that they got you. So like that's also another thing. Besides for naming it, you can like mention it, like throw it in the beginning of play and throwing it at the end of the play, and that really contains it. It's like bookends for your child to know that I got my mommy, I got my time, I got my needs met. Um, so it's really following those things. But I would say it sounds funny, but the most important piece would probably be like the schedule. Not just it can't just be happenstance like, oh, I have time now, so let's sit down, right? Because maybe a child's not in the mood then, or he's not prepared for that. So that's why it's helpful to really have a schedule.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that question, so apparently this child is a little bit disorganized, possibly ADHD.
Yeah.
So, may never actually choose or he'll get distracted before he does.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I guess we'll run into a, distraction type of question. Uh,
Yeah. So what I would do with that is boil it down to two choices. Um, Things that you think you might like, and say, okay, you choose. But if a choice is not made before the time starts, that means that you choose to do and you pick one. So in other words, you're not saying I'm going to choose if you don't choose. You could do that. But if you don't want to do that, you could say you have the option to choose these two things. We can either play checkers or we can play I don't know, spit, right? Whichever one you want, because you know he likes these two. But if you don't choose by then, I'm just gonna it's gonna in my head, we're doing spit. That's your way of choosing spit if you don't come in. So you're making it as if he chose, but you're tightening it for him. You're not giving him a broad range and he gets distracted and he's not sure. You're saying this, I'm going to be waiting, and if you don't choose by then, we're going to do spit. Now, if he comes in and says, I don't want spit, I want checkers, do the checkers. This is about him. But it's about getting him into the zone and having him experience connection because so much of children's, I'm going to say, dysregulation, I don't want to go on air like this, but ADHD type of behaviors, so many times, at least a big ingredient is the fact that they're feeling disconnected and is the fact that they're not getting that dopamine of connection. So that's like a big piece to it also. But tighten it, keep on tightening it and tightening it and tightening it in a child-friendly way, and hopefully that can help.
okay. So as another, I guess, kind of a follow-up type of question. What if a child doesn't really know what they want to do during those 10 minutes? Is it you um, ask questions during those 10 minutes? Do you just talk yourself? I mean, sometimes you come in, let's say you're doing this, because I think it could work, works out well, really for any age. You can even tell your married child, like, I know it's very hard for us to get in touch with each other or something like that. So how about Tuesday night at 7:30 or 8 o'clock after you put the kids to bed, and we'll talk for 15,
Yeah,
10 minutes. So
yeah.
it could work with a teenager as well. You want to make sure before they go out at night or something like that. But if that time comes and the child says, yeah, I just don't have anything to discuss.
So
I
you
don't
say,
know.
okay. So then you say, yeah, totally. This doesn't have to be discussed. So is there something you want to play? Is there something you wanna look up together? I don't love the screen time, but maybe if you're forced against that, you could say like, is there something you want to go shopping? I think a mother and daughter, that's like a very in a funny way. If there's nothing to do, and that's a very nice default. Like let's look at you want to go shopping together online, let's say. I don't love that, but if you need to do that, you can do that. But really, even teenagers, it's like, oh, I don't have anything. Really, there's nothing. So you want to just color? Do you want to just sit and schmooze? Do you want to tell me something that happened, like a funny thing that happened to you this week, and I'll tell you a funny thing that happened to me this week. And I have a list actually of like a bunch of different games of all different age levels, and I can send it to you. Maybe you can send it out to people of different ideas, right? Like you could play silly games. You can, depending on everyone's family's dynamic and everyone's family's level of what they hold is comfortable. Like sometimes it's like, oh, we can paint each other's nails as a mother and a daughter if they're okay with that, or we like just like anything to connect over. It lav dafka has to be schmoozing. It's anything to connect over. Um, and if you feel like your child's gonna pick like something crazy to like, you're sitting down at 7 o'clock and it's like, I want to go to this sports store to buy whatever. Like that's not what it's about. That we should if you know your child's like that, I would try and create some sort of menu for him. Don't ask the chef for something that's not on the menu. Try and create a menu of things that you're okay doing that you know they might like doing.
So that would be for that specific time frame of the
Yeah,
scheduled time frame that we're talking about.
yeah,
Uh, okay, because you could always mention saying like, if you want to go shopping, go to the store. We can do it. We'll schedule, a triple. Let's find the time for a triple session, and then we can, go somewhere and do something like.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
right? Um, so it's, like for instance, Epic Family who, when they work with their families and their children, creating, with mentorship and having, child mentorship programs. I think Shlomo can speak a little bit about that a little bit. Um, but, whereas we in Kol Nashimot, we're really dealing with a struggling child, the child that unfortunately just, like I said, mentioned earlier, with the anxiety and the depression, and then it's just very hard for them to even talk because so much from the outside, whether it's trauma related, through ADHD, system trauma, all different types of situations where the parent can't get a hold of what is going on, which causes a breakdown in the relationship.
Sure.
So for that particular, the 10 minutes time may or may not work so well for that child. I think it works out very nicely in a sense, even if they just sit there and just sit on
Yeah,
the couch.
this is not about processing trauma during this time. This is
No,
about creating the parent-child relationship of whatever the child needs. So if what he needs is just to sit there and you hold his hand, or that's what he needs, you can ask him. But it's not about processing anything. That you can leave to a therapist. But what I'm saying is the base and the thing that they remember and the thing that hits them the most is this is this time. So yeah, for sure. It's more about following them, and it might seem odd for you to be doing it. Like, what? That's what you want? That's really what you want? Just want me to look at pictures of butterflies with you? Really? Okay, I'm gonna do it. I wouldn't have done that if I wouldn't have scheduled this time. I would have been like, this is crazy, or I have no time for this. But since I'm creating this specific time with you, you can do whatever you want.
Does anybody else have any other questions that they might want to bring up? And Shlomo, would you like to say a few words?
I
There you
think,
go.
yeah, there you go. I think you sure did a beautiful job discussing that parent-child relationship, the importance of quality over quantity, especially in our world where people are constantly running in digital age where they're always on their phones and on the internet, and they're always doing something. People aren't sitting anymore like they used to. They're just not just sitting and opening a safe or learning how to cook, or they're constantly involved with something. So stopping all of just to give the children 10 minutes is unbelievable. My own life with other parents at Epic, as you know, we deal with children that made Aliyah, um, and then they didn't fit in the grooves, they don't find their place, kind of slowly fall through the crack, and that makes them lose their place in their own little bubble, in their own society. As I say, right, they built their own society and their own life in America or wherever they were living amongst their
Sure.
schools and their peers. As they get older, their bubble kind of expanded, right? And they grew from just knowing their neighbors to now knowing their friends to knowing their school and their principal. And it gets older, and then they move to Israel, and that bubble kind of pops. And now they have to rebuild that bubble and rebuild that society, in their mind, and then they don't fit. And as their family moves, sometimes they don't fit in their own family, and that connection gets disrupted with their own parents. That their parents have an ideology that they're trying to follow after that the child doesn't necessarily understand themselves. And so, where do they get into that? So that 10 minutes a day is phenomenal advice. So we have over 250 kids in our program annually, and I'm sure just that 10 minutes a day would make a huge difference. Besides all the mentorship and the therapies and the social workers and the case management that we going on, I'm sure that 10 minutes a day by the parent could made a huge impact in a lot of their life.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. It sounds like the work you're doing is amazing. And I think this really bridges whatever gap you're discussing, that if a parent can really be there, be okay with holding the fact that their kid's not happy, and they might want to live in Israel, and they think this is the best for their family, but ultimately in their child's world, right? Like if you go down to that sixth floor for that 6 year old with the 12th floor and that 12 year old, it's very confusing for them. Like, huh? Seriously? I had my friends, I had my clothing, and everything changes. So many stuff. There's so many nuances of cultural differences. So connecting to them over that and giving them that safety, security, like you're saying, is is huge. Yeah.
It's unfortunately some people are lacking in this generation. It's a lot of we realize that quality over quantity instead of quantity over quality, as well as
Yeah.
the previous generation. People are always
Yeah.
busy. Everybody's parents always worked. Everybody comes survivors of some sort, but there was always that 5 or 10 minutes you had at dinner time. I remember when I was younger, dinner time was the time when everybody get together and you had that quality time with your parents or as a family or something. And a lot of that was lost because if something came up at the dinner table, we could always talk to one of the parents afterwards. There was that relationship, that conversation would continue in private after the that we don't really have today. It's not built in as much as we have the Shabbos table. Well, Hashem, but Shabbos table is a lot of guests and songs and mirrors. There's so much other things going on at the time that one-on-one quality time is just not
Yeah. Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Just to add a little bit to that, I mean, like, Shlomo was saying that there's so much out there that could take hold of a child at any age, depending on what age and what situation. The electronic devices today weren't there 20 years ago. I mean, we just didn't have those things growing up, and not so long ago. Today, there's just so much to preoccupy a child that will just cause them to go and be connected to something else. And then when they need somebody to talk to, when some comes up in their own life, because they're connected to some form of electronic device or something from the outside, they have nobody to talk to inside. So yeah, spending those 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes, every couple of days with a particular child will teach a child, even if you do nothing. Hey, we have time to speak and to talk. I want you to know you can be connected to me that will actually talk back to you and love you, unlike something else that will just take up your time and not allow you to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody else has any more questions, this is your chance. Otherwise, Yoshua, I want to thank you so much for your time and really discussing that really very important piece about spending your time and how to approach spending the time with the child. Like you said, it is very difficult, especially in the beginning. It takes practice. And I want to thank you for your time. And Bezrat Hashem, hopefully many people will take a lot of this to heart.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. Okay. Everybody
Okay.
have a good night.
Bye bye.
Have a good night.